Ladies and gentlemen, may I please have your attention? The second plenary session of the 2024 UN Public Service Forum will begin shortly. Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we will now commence plenary session 2 of the 2024 UN Public Service Forum. The theme for plenary session 2 is Revitalizing Partnerships for Sustainable Development, and we have our moderator and 3 panel speakers. To start with, allow me to introduce our moderator for this session. Please welcome onto the stage with a warm round of applause, Ms. Lamia El Mubayad, Vice Chair of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration. Next, we have our panel speakers. Please welcome each person with a big round of applause. First of all, we have here today Professor Park Soon-ae from the Graduate School of Public Administration at Seoul National University. Professor Park, please come on to the stage. Professor Park has held the position of Deputy Prime Minister and Ministry of Education, also President of the Korean Environmental Policy and Administration Society, as well as President of the Korean Association for Public Administration. Professor Park also serves as a member of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration. Next, we have Vice Minister Ko Gi-dong of Interior and Safety from Ministry of Interior and Safety of Republic of Korea. Please come up to the stage. Vice Minister Ko has served in both central and local administration, including roles such as the Vice Mayor of Administrative Affairs in Sejong City, and also Director General for Human Resources Planning, among many others. Vice Minister Ko also holds a PhD in Yonsei University. Finally, we have Mr. Devon Rowe, Executive Director of Caribbean Center for Development Administration. Please come up to the stage. Mr. Rowe's current position as the Executive Director, but he also has been serving as a public servant in Jamaica as a senior levels. He served as Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance and Planning between 2012 and 2016 during the government and executive successful economic reforms. Now, I believe our moderator and panelists are seated. I now hand the floor to our moderator, Ms. El Mubayad. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Excellency. Welcome to the second plenary on June 25 of the UN Public Service Forum and Award Ceremony. I am really honored to welcome a panel of distinguished guests here and to discuss a most optimistic subject on revitalizing global partnership for sustainable development. I come from a country and a region where, unfortunately, many of our optimistic discussions yesterday and today have been discontinued, I'm afraid, by some atrocities unfolding. And I do hope that there will be space and time for people with wisdom to reflect on what needs to be done and to join the call of the United Nations Secretary General for a peaceful world. Challenges, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, are in recent years huge. Climate change, COVID-19 pandemic, rising inequalities, growing nationalism, and diminishing trust in national and multilateral institutions have posed immense threats to global cooperation. As we progress towards SDGs, we need to intensify efforts to revive partnerships at all levels. And this can be done by recommitting to multilateral collaboration, by leveraging technology, as we heard yesterday, for the achievement of sustainable development, and by harmonizing policies and efforts. Global challenges are more than ever intricate and interconnected. No one is spared, and certainly no one can stand alone, as strongly stated in the opening ceremony by esteemed officials. Evidence tells us that safeguarding and accelerating progress towards ending poverty is an ongoing battle in the whole world. That fragile and conflict-affected states, home to 1 billion people across more than 40 countries, are at particular risk in the era of poly-perma crisis. That building a peaceful world is another arduous battle, especially with ongoing wars and conflicts in Sudan, Syria, Yemen, Libya, Haiti, Iraq, and Gaza. Data show that the number of violent conflicts worldwide has tripled since 2001, and this is concerning. Almost half recur, with almost 20% of conflicts recurring more than 3 times, and this is more concerning. Global defense spending continue to increase, and arms deals sales are thriving. Conflict represents a harmful and persistent source of underdevelopment for large numbers of people, but also climate change. Asia experienced the highest number of climate-related disasters in 2023, with storms, floods, heat waves causing significant casualties and economic losses. The region is warming faster than the global average, exacerbating the frequency and severity of these events. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports that glacier retreat is accelerating, particularly in high mountain regions like the Himalayas. Sea levels are rising faster than the global average in several parts of Asia due to thermal expansion and melting ice caps. Some climate impacts are now so severe that they cannot be adapted to, leading to irreversible losses. For example, regions dependent on glacier melt for water are facing shortages, and coastal communities, like in the Caribbean, are losing coral reefs crucial for their livelihoods. The Northwest Pacific Ocean recorded its highest sea surface temperature in 2023. These are the latest, contributing to widespread coral bleaching and impacting marine ecosystems. Each new crisis, ladies and gentlemen, aggravates underlying fragilities and creates spillovers that can decentralize entire regions. Not only Agenda 2030 is off track and reversal, but the universal system of rights is also in crisis, and with it, a profound crisis of humanity. This puts a burden a burden on governments, a burden on communities directly involved, a burden on all of us citizens, but also on the international community more broadly, with around 8 out of every $10 of humanitarian funding spent going to conflict-affected areas instead of going to sustainable development and to facing these tremendous challenges. So yes, we need to carefully consider what needs to be done, and we have to look at uncomfortable issues that help us move to the territory of the attainable by reconnecting to multilateral collaboration, by leveraging technology again for the achievement of the SDGs, and by harmonizing policies and efforts. With this small introduction of the great challenges that we are facing as humanity, I would like to start by asking my esteemed panelists, starting with Mrs. Sunay Park, about partnership, about her view on partnership for development, and with SDG 17 being the central goal about global cooperation, purposely designed to guide us, government, private sector, and civil society, from both your Korean and global perspective, as a member also of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Administration, on Public Administration. What have been, in your view, Mrs. Park, the consequences of the global shift inward, and why is there a need today, more than ever, to revitalize cooperation efforts at all levels? Yours. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I'm honored to be here and look forward to contributing to these important discussions. And since 2015, we've seen countries focusing more on themselves rather than working together. This change has had some big consequences. First, think about conflicts like US and China tensions, the Ukraine war, as mentioned, Lamia, and Middle Eastern conflicts have disrupted the supply chains and heightened the regional tensions. These problems have made countries focus on their own rules instead of working together. The failure of supply chain has shown how interconnected we are. But the reaction has often been to look inward and make national rules stronger instead of collaborating with others. Second, it's a slow down progress on SDGs. Many goals like climate change, SDG 13, and life below water, SDG 14, need countries to work together. When countries focus on their own interests instead of working globally, it's much harder to tackle these big issues. For example, climate change doesn't respect national boundaries. So fighting it needs global teamwork. Less cooperation has led to scattered efforts, making real progress tough. Third, the shift has weakened the global health response. As we experienced the COVID-19 pandemic, showed us how interconnected our world is. The initial lack of cooperation highlighted the need for strong global partnerships. Countries that focused only their own responses found it hard to control the viruses. So, why do we need revitalized cooperation at all levels? I think first, global challenges need global solutions. Issues like global change, pandemics, and economic instability can be solved by one country alone. We need strong international cooperation to create comprehensive strategies and share resources and knowledge effectively. Second, revitalizing cooperation is essential for promoting peace and inequality. The SDGs are connected and progressed in the era often supports progress in the others. For example, achieving SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions can create a more stable environment which helps economic growth and social development at the same time. Better cooperation can help address the root causes of conflict and inequality. This is leading a more peaceful and prosperous world. I think these are the key points we think about, and as one of the SEFA member. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Park. And indeed, revitalizing cooperation is particularly important at current times. And for countries like the Caribbean, from where Mr. Rowe comes, this is felt hardly because it's a particularly affected zone when cooperation is stalled. Solidarity, Mr. Rowe, is a word that came up very strongly in the opening session many times, stressed upon from former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon again. Solidarity, cooperation, resilience. From both your Caribbean and your global perspective, what have been, to you, the dire and the good consequences of this shift, if we might say so, and what is your call? What is the call of your region?
Thank you very much, Chair. And at the very outset, let me also thank the organizers for having invited me to this session. Let me start by speaking to the circumstances of the Caribbean. We are small, open, vulnerable economies. We are, in the most part, islands that share a similar history and culture, but remain unique in our separate ways. And dealing with the shifts that have been observed, we are also dealing with the challenges of climate change, environmental challenges, and just to speak to climate change for a second, because islands are so close together, one hurricane passing through the region affects multiple countries. And so the pain is shared at the same time, and so therefore support that one would expect could come in a normative arrangement does not necessarily occur, because each country is then dealing with its own circumstances. Let's go to 2017, 2018, when we had Hurricane Maria and Irma that caused 212% of GDP damage in Dominica. It also affected other countries. A volcano in St. Vincent affected other countries as well too in terms of the ashfall. And so therefore it imposed a difficulty on the fiscal arrangements in those countries to respond. So while dealing with your current problems, you also have to be dealing with problems created elsewhere in the world that impact on the Caribbean. What has been the effect? The effect has been that there has been migration in some countries. There has been not brain drain, but brain transfer to other parts of the world, leading to a weakness in our own arrangements to address our own challenges. So climate change brings a challenge. The commitments that have been given have not been forthcoming, and in terms of financing, and I characterize it this way, that climate financing is like the abominable snowman. We keep hearing about it, but nobody has ever seen it. So we are in a situation where we have to rely on weak, fragile economies that must utilize limited fiscal resources for multiplicity of solutions, even though the problems were not created within the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you for this view from a region that is most affected by the non-cooperation. And as you well said, what happens elsewhere affect other countries and sometimes create damages in other people contexts that are fiscally extremely difficult to bear. Maybe if we turn to a more positive cooperation here, we think of COVID-19 pandemic where, of course, it was the highest moment or the peak moment where critical international cooperation and partnership became extremely essential and reminded us that we are all in on one planet. And when it came to responsiveness to the global crisis, this required coordinated efforts, responses, information, resources sharing across borders. And also during this period, many partnerships were created at national levels again, and these partnerships were lesson learned, hopeful for other areas. Because they brought together individual citizens, civil society actors, government, private sector, and they joined hands. Korea has given a great example, and I would like to revert to Mr. Ko and ask him about the Korean experience in establishing and building trust, the transparency, resilience, unity, and safety together as a development cooperation strategy that support also partner countries, that supported partner countries in their COVID-19 response. And what can be done, in your view, Mr. Crow, to sustain this kind of partnership spirit beyond the pandemic and incorporates the lesson from this successful partnership into other themes, other contexts, where probably, as Mr. Rowe said, more cooperation and more partnership and solidarity are needed. The floor is yours, Mr. Ko.
네, 저장님 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you very much, moderator, for that question, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. So yes, we did overcome COVID-19. The citizens, the private sector, the government, and the international community came together to overcome COVID-19. And without the unity, we would not been able to fight COVID-19. And I'm sure that we will still be in the tunnel. And it was actually a cave rather than a tunnel. And we learned something from that. So one single government cannot put up a show alone. So we need partnership. We need to work together. And that was the lesson that we learned throughout the COVID-19. And to overcome COVID-19, the private sector, the civil society came together with the Korean government. Especially, we relied on the technology and the resources of the private sector, and we are still grateful to the private sector. And we do still believe that we need to contribute to the international community. And to achieve SDG by 2030, I believe that we need to enhance partnership, and we need to really level up. After COVID-19, Korea is seeking to contribute more to the international community. Back in 2019, during the G20 summit at Osaka, we actually made a commitment. By 2030, the Korean government will contribute in terms of ODA, double that of 2019 by 2030. And after COVID-19, to keep up to the commitment from 2022, 23, and go on, we have increased ODA. This year, we increased ODA by more than 30%. So by 2030, we plan to deliver our ODA target. But in fact, we were able to expedite that, and we are now already delivering the target 6 years earlier than scheduled. So we need to really accelerate solidarity and cooperation. And I believe that is one of the lessons we learned from COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ko. And indeed, Korea stands unique in its transformation to a high-income country in the last 6 decades, and building on this experience and under the centerpiece principles of the Busan Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation, Korea has indeed made immense efforts to realize global value and mutual prosperity through the principles of course, of cooperation and achieving mutual prosperity through the achievement of the SDGs. So I would like to, again, here revert to Mrs. Sune and move to a different question regarding, again, global cooperation, a consequent question regarding global cooperation and climate change in particular, and ask you about this particular theme. So this is one pressing area where partnership at different levels are extremely needed. I think that Korea, as we know, believes that addressing climate change does not place a burden, but on the contrary, provides opportunities to create future drivers of economic growth. And at different years, there have been voluntary mitigation targets set to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 30%, if I recall well from my reading, by 2030s. And there have been extremely ambitious targets on policies and action for combating climate change. Could you give us some examples of successful partnerships to address this particular challenge, and what has been successful in your view?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Regarding the Korean situation, Deputy Prime Minister Ko will address it, so I will focus on from global and Asian perspectives. I introduced 2 cases. One notable example of a successful climate change cooperation in Asia is the USAID Clean Power Asia program. This program has helped mobilize over $7 billion in renewable energy investment across Southeast Asia. A landmark project supported by this program is construction of Vietnam's first solar farm, a 257 megawatt facility in Phuyen province. This solar farm can supply energy to over 50,000 homes. It has significantly reduced carbon dioxide emissions, and it is a key part of Vietnam's strategy to boost its renewable energy capacity. Another notable example is the cooperation between Germany and Morocco on renewable energy project with a special focus on solar power. A major project is called the Noor Power Station, one of the largest concentrated solar power complexes in the world. Germany supported this project by providing funding, technology transfer, and expertise. Both Germany and Morocco and Vietnam project highlighted the success of international cooperation in order to address the climate change. But my recent paper published in the Science of Total Environment in 2023 looked at the global impacts of renewable energy on climate vulnerability. And this study shows the opposite result. Even though many countries are pursuing for renewable energy to fight climate change, it doesn't always work out well for poor countries. Let me give you an example of the Democratic Republic of Congo. In the Congo, the push for renewable energy has led to some serious problems. First, there's environmental damage and health risks. As we know, Congo is a major producer of cobalt, which is essential for electric vehicle batteries. The global demand for cobalt had led severe environmental damage. Mining operations pollute water sources and destroy forests, harming local communities. who rely on these resources. People living near mines face health risks from exposures to toxic chemical and heavy metals. Second, there's a worsening energy poverty. Despite being rich in cobalt, Congo struggles with severe energy poverty. Ironically, only about 19% of population has access to electricity. The focus of exporting cobalt hasn't improved the country's energy infrastructure. In addition, revenues from cobalt mining often don't reach the local population, leaving them without better energy access. Third, there's the issue on child labor and poor working conditions. Many families in Congo depend on mining for their livelihoods, and children are often forced to work in dangerous conditions to help support their families. This situation is a direct result of increased demand for renewable energy technologies, highlighting a critical issue in ensuring a fair and ethical shift to green energy. To make sure that the burden on climate action doesn't unfairly impact countries like Congo, we need specific measures. Even though renewable energy is crucial for combating climate change, its implementation must be fair. Policies should align with the needs and realities of local communities, especially in low-income developing countries like Congo. By focusing on local level needs and adapting strategies to unique regional conditions, we can ensure a fair shift to renewable energy. These are my views on global cooperation and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Park. And thank you for this very interesting global perspective, and I think which englobes most of the challenges, specifically when it comes to the poor country bearing the brunt. And I think also one common thing about the Caribbean is that the Caribbean are already bearing the brunt of climate change, as Mr. Rowe just explained, and small island nations are among the countries, just like poor countries of Africa, that are the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change, but also climate change reduction policy that does not really look into the future. And Mr. Rowe, several countries, including Barbados, Dominica, have ambitious plans to reduce their emissions and invest more in climate-resilient infrastructure. Now, I don't know how much they view our intergenerational equity is a component of these policies, but we know that climate finance remains a challenge as these countries also struggle with heavy debt burdens, and despite, again, receiving ODA, international support, regional and international. In your view, what are the specific measures and mechanisms that are needed to put in place, especially on the financial side, to ensure that the burden of climate action do not fall, unfortunately and unfairly, on these countries? Could you elaborate on this particular aspect of finance, given your own background as a senior policymaker at the Ministry of Finance in your country?
Thank you, Chair. Again, let me provide some context that despite the fact that resources aren't readily available for climate resolutions, the countries have been taking actions themselves. So, for example, Dominica has developed a climate-resilient strategy for their country. They have developed a public sector strategy to support that strategy, and they have just completed an organizational restructuring of the public sector to support it and to ensure sustainability going forward. In Jamaica, they're trying to move away as best they can from fossil fuel and moving into wind and solar energy. But the pace of change is slow because of the inability to access financing. And in Barbados, Barbados is trying to encourage more use of solar. Now, I think to look at the financing side, there's going to be need to include the private sector to ensure that capabilities exist within the public service to create bankable projects that the private sector will be able to or would be attracted to invest in. In addition as well to formulate new arrangements with insurance companies to take on some of the burden that may be required for restorative actions as well. And so far, there is a Caribbean catastrophic risk insurance facility that does offer parametric insurance based on the nature of the damage experienced and does a rapid release of funds to ensure that some financial support is available for restorative action. But we need to also include the private sector and to use private sector expertise to develop new products that can address some of the challenges that we identify. Maybe speak to further debt relief as one option that should be on the table to facilitate small island developing states as well as developing countries more broadly. In addition as well to Seychelles had done a sustainable bond. I think we need to explore and determine how best we can further enhance the use of sustainable bonds in a way that provides multi-year and intergenerational benefits for the countries that we are looking at. And finally, is there a way to transfer technologies and capacity building to less developed countries so that they can move up the developmental change as quickly as possible? And here, Chair, I must say that I want to thank Korea for the work that they have been doing and the participation and partnerships that they have created to facilitate some of this leapfrogging that is so, so very necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roy, and I think for drawing the attention to the debt relief, an extremely sensitive topic. And may I ask Mr. Ko to comment on that as we discuss these very tough issues, but also looking maybe also about other types of intelligent cooperation when it comes to technological innovations that could also play enhancing role in global partnership. The floor is yours, Mr. Ko.
네, 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. Before I talk, I would like to add on climate change. Now we are here in Incheon, Songdo, and back in 2013, GCF was launched. So it's headquartered here in Songdo. And GCF contributes the largest of money to climate action, and the GCF fund needs to draw more attention to be able to contribute more. And at the end of the year, COP29 will take place in Azerbaijan. And I believe that the leaders will discuss more about financing and how we can contribute more. And you talked about technological innovation and how it can contribute to achieving SDG. So I would like to draw your attention to emerging technologies and AI, which is the talk of the town. Of course, we do see some optimistic future, but at the same time, we will need a new order because a new digital world will not only spur digital innovation, but we have to make sure that everybody benefits from the technological advances and everybody must co-prosper. And to move into that direction, the Korean government actually laid out a blueprint, and we set some principles about the future digital society. And we are currently discussing with the international community about this topic. At the time, we said that everybody should have the freedom and right to access digital technology. For instance, we have to make sure that kiosks are available to use for all the vulnerable groups. And as for the remote technologies, I believe that everybody must have equal access to those technologies. And everybody must also have equal opportunities, which means that we need to boost digital literacy. Number three, to make a trustworthy and safe digital society, we need to look into the topics of trust and ethics as well as fair outcomes. At the same time, for the digital technology to be used cross borders, we need to also assist the global south and make sure that we close the digital discrepancy and digital gap between countries, because this has to be universal. So when it comes to the principles of the digital society, we are currently discussing with the UN and the OECD to advance the discussions. And as I mentioned, everyone must benefit from digital technologies and everybody must have fair access to digital technologies. Thank you.
Indeed. And this is, thank you for bringing the importance of partnership and sharing the technologies, bridging the divide and addressing the issues in the global south, as we all need to move. And there is a say that if we walk alone, you probably walk fast, but if we walk together, we reach the objective better. And that's, I think, the wisdoms of the partnership and the globalization. In the AI era, South Korea has emerged, of course, as a prominent player, as we all know, and there is a strong focus on research and development, robust technology environment, energetic startup scenes. And it is extremely tempting to stay alone and to compete. But again, the idea is how to make everybody benefit of this development. So I'm addressing the question to you, Mrs. Park, looking to the future. What kind of role do you see technology innovation playing in enhancing global partnership for sustainable development? And given the very interesting scene created with, of course, the AI strategy of Korea, the scale-ups, as you call it, the work on this network of academic, industry, and research institutes to create this ecosystem. And you come from both worlds, public service, academia, and now a global perspective. How do you see this working together for attaining the human objective of development together again?
Thank you, Madam Chair, but I'm not sure I have ability to answer all your questions. Dr. Go, or Deputy Prime Minister, told about AI in general standards. And I want to say about the artificial intelligence in terms of environmental policy problem, how to solve, we can use the AI. Before we discuss artificial intelligence, I want to mention my study 10 years ago that looked at whether introducing CNG buses, CNG bus means compressed natural gas, improved air quality in Korea. Even though CNG bus did help reduce the local air pollution, Korea's air quality is also heavily influenced by air pollution from China. In China's air pollution index goes above a certain level, it affects Korea as well, and canceling out the impact of Korea's clean air policies. This highlights the importance of regional cooperation in solving transboundary pollution problems. However, recent technology innovations such as artificial intelligence are expected to significantly help in addressing the issue of transboundary pollution. Here's how it can make a difference, and especially China, Japan, and Korea. The Northeast Asia Clean Air Partnership started in 2018. Actually, it originated about 1990. It helps countries cooperate on air pollution using science and smart policies. Especially, it targets pollutants like PM 2.5 and PM 10. Through these initiatives, South Korea and China and Japan share information and conduct joint projects on air quality management. They use AI and data analytics to improve air pollution forecasting and develop effective strategies to reduce pollution. This regional cooperation highlights the importance of technological innovation in tackling transboundary air pollution. I will summarize in 3 ways how AI can contribute to this type of environmental pollution. First, technology can help us communicate and collaborate better across the borders. We can use advanced AI and IoT technologies to set up a comprehensive air quality monitoring network across these countries. AI can process data from sensors in real time and provide up-to-date information on air quality. The shared data helps identify pollution sources more accurately and allows for coordinated responses to pollution events. So if pollution from China is affecting Korea and Japan, they can take temporary measures to reduce the impact. AI can also help the policy making by simulating different environment policies and analyzing historical data. AI can show policymakers the most effective ways to reduce emissions. This can lead to adopting best practices across the region. I believe technological innovation helps improve communication, drive effective solutions, and bridge development gaps and build capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Park, for bringing the issue of data here, because it is an extremely important subject that might seem very obvious in some contexts, but it is very tough to gather in other contexts again. And as we progress towards the SDG, we know that monitoring and evaluation is most of the time based on data, both quantitative and qualitative. And harnessing the data is not that easy in specific contexts. So if I turn to Mr. Rowe, and we've heard the potentiality of AI again in helping in monitoring and evaluation. According to a report by ECLAC, which is the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, this is one of the 5 regional commissions of the United Nations, and it specifically states the production of adequate and timely official data and statistics is a challenge, especially the production in consistent manner. How can we do some progress on SDGs without this data capability? And with this in mind, what types of partnership do you think are necessary to create at national, regional, and global levels to close the existing data gaps and to better support developing and least developed country in setting this data infrastructure needed, that's so eagerly needed to be able to progress? The floor is yours, Mr. Rowe.
I'm wondering why. Because this is clearly a question that I am not thinking there's any easy answer to. But in our regional experience, we recognize that countries are at different stages of capabilities with statistics. So, for example, Jamaica is clearly more advanced than the other countries, and they have been making an outreach to other Caribbean countries to improve their capabilities. However, we run up into the problem of small size and scale and capabilities. And so here's where technology could, in fact, assist a fair bit as well, too. One of the challenges that I believe that ECLAC report would have pointed to as well is the need for commonality across organizations in terms of data collection, same forms, same meanings. And I think in some respects it may also require a Caribbean interface to ensure that there is similarity across the region, and so the transferability of methodologies becomes much easier. There are partnerships that could be useful as well. So, for example, Jamaica has had a long history with Canada, and Canada has moved towards formalizing an informal arrangement of support into a more formal documented method in terms of ensuring that the meetings take place at the political level, meetings take place at the senior technical levels, and with specific timelines and actions for delivery. So there are some activities within country to ensure that there is a common method. There are also activities across the region as well that would be useful, and also having exposure to technologies elsewhere which facilitate the ease of transferability of human talent to other parts of the region could also be useful. But as with everything else since the wheel was created, if it exists somewhere else, it's not necessary for us to be recreating the wheel, but that transfer of technology could be very useful to our region. It is a problem that has been recognized, and it is recognized as well too because the evidence-based information decision-making, the evidence-based decision-making relies on that information. And finally, climate type statistics is very different from our typical economic statistics. And so it will require specialized skills as well. So some type of competence building is also going to be required.
Thank you very much. And I think we'll come back to this issue of competence building, which I think is critical to all our discussion. But I would like to see if Mrs. Park has anything to add on data and on global partnership to harness and improve capacity for data collection and use in decision making. Okay. And maybe you can answer it while answering also the question on peer learning also and on building the capacity of public servers. Because in this area in particular, the exchange of knowledge and the exchange of experiences among countries is key. And I think that developing the capacity of civil service, whether in data collection and using data for decision making, is as important in the context of the Caribbean as in other contexts too. So would you like to comment on that and also maybe bring some successful examples from your own context too?
Actually, I prepared another question, but I continue. Yeah, progressing on sustainable development goals needs solid data to guide strategies and policy to check their effectiveness, I think. Partnerships are crucial for generating and mobilizing this data, improving its reliability, and closing data gaps. I have been researching EPI with Yale University for over 10 years. Yale University's Environmental Performance Index is a great example of how different types of partnerships can support these goals at national, regional, and global levels. The EPI, developed by Yale University and Columbia University's Center for International Earth Science Information Network, provides data-driven summary of global sustainability. It ranks countries on environmental health and ecosystem vitality using indicators to show how close countries are to environmental policy targets. Actually, last June 4th, they publicized the country rank, and Korea's a little bit downsized. At the national level, the EPI relies on governments to get data on water quality, biodiversity, and carbon emissions. This data analyzed by Yale and Columbia to ensure accuracy. These collaborations ensure comprehensive and reliable data, supporting better national policies and strategies. Recently, the EPI worked with organizations like the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organizations to gather the region-specific data. Globally, the EPI collaborates with the entities like Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation and See Around Us to integrate global environmental standards. The EPI also technical support to developing countries to improve their environmental data collection. This includes training local researchers and providing necessary tools. Building local capacity ensures these countries can independently collect and manage reliable data. This is crucial for monitoring SDGs progress. International partnerships often include financial support to help developing countries establish robust environmental monitoring systems. For example, funding from the McCain Foundation supports EPI work at both Yale and Columbia. Furthermore, adequate funding helps close the data gaps by enabling the purchase of necessary equipment and hiring the skilled personnel. The EPI uses global data sharing platforms that allow countries to access and share environmental data easily. These platforms promote transparency and collaboration, making it easier for developing countries to benefit from global environmental data. I think the Environmental Performance Index overall shows the strong partnership at all levels can greatly improve data generation and mobilization. And these partnerships also help close data gaps and better support developing countries in tackling global development goals. Thank you.
Indeed, I think this is a long stride for us to move on. And I think at the discussions of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration, this area of data, enhancing data capabilities came up in every session as an important area for partnership. And thank you for these very excellent examples on how to make this partnership work in practice, because it's great to have great ideas, but then again, put them in practice. Maybe I will turn to Mr. Ko to from data to learning, and I think the symbiosis here is evident. Exchanging of knowledge, experiences among countries is also an area that is quite promoted by Korea in particular, and over the past 5 years, Korea has continuously strived to make meaningful contribution to the international community in that sense, sharing knowledge and playing a key bridging role. And this was highly praised in the OECD peer review latest report into 2023 and previously in 2017. So do you have successful example to inspire us on partnerships, on how can we make these interactions made more effective? The floor is yours, Mr. Rowe.
네, 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you very much. So, from an international perspective, national development, of course, is a process of learning and competition. And by competition, I mean, well, as you mentioned, of course, there may be some fair competition and you may rank countries according to that. But in that process, we learn from one another, and that is of essence because learning from experience can actually help us grow as a country. And I'll give you the example of Korea and what we do. And actually, back in the 50s, Korea was a poor country, and today is June 25th, and we actually celebrate the Korean War today. At the time, during the Korean War, our per capita GDP was only $80. But as you can see here in Korea, we have grown so much and we have learned a lot in the process. And the 새마을 movement is actually what took us here. And it helped us overcome poverty and really help the rural communities grow and develop. And it really gave us a sense of can do. This can do spirit was infused to the Korean people. Now, to 74 countries, we have carried out invitational workshops and workshops of different forms to share the knowledge. And for instance, we have East Timor and other countries that have learned from this 새마을 movement and have created their own versions. And we also have a cooperative network with a number of countries to share experience and to give them our own experience. And also, we also had a ministerial meeting on 새마을 movement. And at the time when I was at the meeting, well, I could see the passion of the ministers of other countries. So in countries that are still struggling in terms of economic growth, they want to benchmark Korea. So about vice ministers and ministers from 30 countries participated in that meeting, and I believe that we need to have forums like that in the future as well. So be it policy or finance or administration, we would like to provide more support to more countries. Thank you.
Thank you for this inspiring word. It is, I really know this can-do attitude, and it is truly important in today's very difficult world to have passionate, you said passion, you talked about passion, passionate leaders who are ready to face these challenges, who are ready to lead their countries, and who are ready also to learn from other good experiences. And yes, indeed, this is a big challenge everywhere. More people, passionate leaders and leadership is something that came up also in other panel discussions. And I think this is what we eagerly, look at when we talk about trust and trust in institutions. Devin, my fellow committee member, from your perspective of the Caribbean, but also from your global perspective. Peer learning and combining inter-regional exchanges and peer learning and inspiration, I might say, is a great way to take societies forward, to take knowledge from around the globe and use it to inspire initiatives that are suitable to local and regional context. Stiglitz used to say, think globally and invent locally. Would you have some specific thoughts on that? Would you have some specific insight from your both Caribbean and global perspective?
With regards to peer-to-peer, I'm usually challenged with a question in my own mind, and that is, do I need to know my peer? Or do I need to have access to the information of a potential peer? So I think about that because in Jamaica, some 15 years or so, I was asked to put in place a centralized treasury management system for the government of Jamaica. And in leading it, I read maybe 2,500 pages of information on centralizing treasury from people who I had never met. And so it was very, very useful to me in terms of doing a conceptual design for a centralized treasury. So whereas peer-to-peer may be good to meet those experts, there is also an important component with regards to documentation and the sharing of experiences that can be in maybe some sort of clearinghouse that is available to everybody, no matter where they are on the planet. And with the technologies that we have now, it should be relatively easy to do that. I did, in fact, meet some of the persons who had written those papers, and it led to even more useful information that I was able to use for implementation. But a peer is someone or an organization or institution facing or who have faced a challenge similar to yours and is able to, and therefore able to provide information in terms of not only what made them successful, but also the mistakes they made, so that we can avoid them coming behind them, and to take that as a development dividend of some sort in terms of our own processes. So why am I saying that? I'm saying that because I think we need to share native solutions, we need to share national solutions, we need to share international solutions in a way that allow adaptation within the countries. Secondly, at the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, we have developed a schema for public sector transformation. And we did that by looking at several developed countries across the world in terms of what they did, and we also looked at within our own region in terms of what successful arrangements were, looked at the mistakes as well, and from that we were able to distill a set of steps that would be required. Now, it benefited from international experience and local circumstances. And we also sought to look at countries that were similar in stage of development as ourselves in terms of putting together the solutions. So peer-to-peer learning is essential, but I suppose the big point I'm making here, or maybe the small point, is that we need not know the peer, but have access to the information that allow us in our own environments to make the adjustments that are required.
Absolutely. Peer-to-peer exchange works in an environment where there is a transparency and accessibility of information. And I think when we say peer-to-peer, we often tend to think of people who are alike. Yes, definitely. But yesterday in the panel on AI, we talked about the importance of having dialogue across the board with people who seemingly are of a different trade, but that they can move us to move together. And I think you do agree with that the private sector here has an important role to play, as they command massive human resources, financial resources, technology, and they are more and more in the driving seats, driving innovation, and sometimes maybe let's say, competing mostly with governments on who kind of have the design quicker. So I would like to, based on this connection between the different views, to ask Mr. Ko his view on that, and looking specifically at the provision of public services, how the private sector is mobilized around shared SDGs and Korean companies specifically, strategically contributing and benefiting advance and progress on the SDGs. Would you like to comment on that? Maybe give us some flavor from a very thriving private sector country. The floor is yours.
Well, yes, so I will tell you what the private sector is doing well. We have a digital cooperation center, and in 8 countries around the world, we provide support to those countries. And we actually work with their governments. That would be our channel. But on top of that, well, the activities will be carried out by the private sector. And we work with those countries to brainstorm and to talk about how we can elevate digital literacy. And in the 8 countries where the Digital Cooperation Center sits, actually I saw a report of the UN Digital Index, and I saw that the ranking went up about 15 ranks or so. So they're doing much better in the digital sector. And I think that the government alone would not been able to take that far. It was thanks to the private sector that they were able to advance to that level. As the moderator mentioned, I think that we now see the end of an era where the government takes full ownership. I think that we have to work together with the private sector. And to add on that, well, from the perspective of pure learning, well, when I was little and going to school, everybody told me you have to have knowledge, to have power. But then as we moved to late 90s and with the advent of 2000s, we heard people saying searching will be your power. So you have to search well on the internet. And recently, in retrospect, I think asking good questions is actually power. So as the moderator asked questions, I think we have to ask questions to one another, to peer learn and to peer evaluate. And in that process, we can collaborate and we can forge a stronger partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. And I think as we are coming to the end of this very interesting panel, I would like to pose the last question to my fellow UN Committee of Public Administration members and recall the role of this committee, the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration, on their input to the high-level political forum in what concerns SDG 17 in particular. And in this report, the committee stressed that the multilateral world order of rule-based institutionalized globalizations seems to be in demise as new geopolitical configurations are emerging, and that it pointed to concerns, very courageously pointing to concerns about national economies' dependencies and interruption of global value chains, leaving government to favor measures of national security. It definitely pointed out to the immensity of the challenge and that the fact that there are indications that we have less dynamics and that the dynamics of cooperation in itself is weakening. Although we've heard extremely positive stories here from the context of Korea. I would like to address the question, starting with you, Ms. Park, about the role of the committee, the role of the United Nations and other organizations. What practical actions do you think can be taken, what to give a new breath and to a more, let's say, solidaire breath, a rejuvenated breath to the spirit of multilateral cooperation? How can we better support partnership in a context where the whole world is looking onward?
Actually, I had two versions, and I'm not sure which version you want to hear. I first tell you about the text version. As a member of the UN Committee of Experts on Public Administration, I'm excited to share how we contribute to sustainable development and international cooperations. Each year, we gather experts from around the globe to discuss governance trends and create actionable resolutions. This interdisciplinary approach helps us to address complex governance issues efficiently. And we also focus on building the capacity through technical assistance and training, strengthening public administration worldwide. Our work directly supports the Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 16, Peace, Justice, and Strong Institutions, and also SDG 17, Partnership for the Goals. By fostering the international cooperation, we share best practices and innovations and critical for achievement these goals. In conclusion, SEPA role is vital in shaping effective governance frameworks promoting sustainable development and advancing international cooperations. And through our advisory role and annual sessions and capacity building efforts, we continue to drive the global governance agenda forward, I think. This is the textual, the comments we always talk in this conference, but for the 2030 goals to accomplish, I want to say something weird ideas.
You're welcome.
I think SDG is a word that had been around for too long, and people think it's one-out issue and are not interested in anymore in some countries like Korea. And in order to capture the public's interest, we could create something like movies or Netflix series showcasing the UN and other international organizations. These would be like popular action adventure series like 007, James Bond 007, highlighting challenges in poor countries and regional conflicts. They would show the UN's leadership in resolving conflict issues and inspire people worldwide. The idea is to make these stories compelling and emotional, showing real-life heroes and impactful missions that the UN undertake. By doing so, we can inspire and engage global citizens, making them more aware and supportive of these critical efforts. We could also expand programs to engage children, teenagers, and young adults. This could include educational initiatives, interactive platforms, and social media campaigns. This would make it easy and fun for young people to join and support global causes. This approach uses storytelling and media to highlight important global issues and the efforts to address them. It can build a more informed and compassionate global community ready to support and engage with international efforts for a better world, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an extremely interesting message. And I do personally, I'm very motivated to pursue it further because yes, there is the formalities of doing the regular work, but there is room, I think, today for more bold approaches, more innovative approaches. And now you say, in actions that inspire emotions and that they build us, look at us and touch us as human beings, engage us in the global fight. Moving to a context where this is particularly important and the last word is for you, Devon, what, in your view, are actions that can take the UN further to the contribution, whether in your position as SEPA or as a global citizen?
Thank you. There's something you do not know about me, and it is that I'm a ventriloquist. And as Sune was speaking, that was actually me saying all those words. But essentially, I agree 100%. And this year I was not able to participate in person at SEPA. And so I participated virtually. But as I sat there, I had an out-of-body experience, because whereas I was sitting in as a member of the committee, I was also viewing the committee and the various perspectives they were sharing. And I did think that communication of the SEPA principles of effective governance was urgent. I also thought as well too that greater communication about SDGs was necessary, and that we needed also to develop more templates and tools to support a wide cross-section of persons all over. Now, all of these things the UN is already doing, but we need to do more. And so I welcome the idea of a Netflix series. And I'm prepared to do a cameo role in the Netflix series. But I think we need to do things to capture the attention. Also, I think with about 55% of the world's population under 30, this is actually going to be reaching them, and it's actually reaching that next generation of leaders that can carry forward whatever comes after the SDGs. Now, I want to applaud the UN for taking action to include the SDGs in schools of public administration, in public service training institutes across a wide cross-section of countries. And I think as well too that we need to get more directly to the public, and that's why I love this idea of the Netflix series. Netflix, are you listening? I think we really need to get communication to as wide a cross-section as persons as possible in as many languages as we can, because there's an urgent need for adaptation to the principles of effective governance as well as the SDGs. But finally, last week I met with the Chief Justices of the Caribbean region, and I presented the principles of effective governance, and they thought it was great. Because it aligned very well to the work that they do. And so it gave me, again, reaffirmation about the universality of the principles of effective governance, and that we should really be communicating as far and wide as is possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very interesting conclusion. I hope our SEPA chair, Mrs. Geraldine Fraser-Moliketi in South Africa, is listening to us and taking notes of the proposal for doing a Netflix series on the work and on the principle of effective governance. For those who are interested to know more about this principle, I really encourage you to go on the DESA website and to find these principles. They are pluralistic, transversal, adaptable to various cultures, and they are indeed a very interesting framework of thinking and of moving towards attaining the SDGs, culturally sensitive and also very adaptable. Ending at 11:00 exactly, I probably would not have the time to do a conclusion, but just I would like to highlight the importance of, in the words, innovation, of the word solidarity, of the word can do, of the word inspiration, of the word emotions that are extremely important for our work in sustainable development, because the element finally is a shared humanity. So ladies and gentlemen and excellencies, please join me in thanking our esteemed, distinguished panelists for this long and tedious morning conversation. And thanks to you for listening and for thinking with us and acting with us towards the goals and the principles that we are all promoting. Thank you very, very much.
That concludes today's plenary session. Thank you everyone for joining us today. There will be a short break before we continue with the parallel session on the first floor at 11:15. And a few more important notices for your attention. Please make sure to take all your belongings with you when you leave the hall, since the hall will be locked. All participants are required to drop by the registration desk today in order to pick up your lunch coupon. Lunch will be served in the premier ballroom. The study tour will take place today at 4 p.m. Please visit the information desk to register your interest in the study tour. Please confirm also your place with the team even if you have registered. And also, there are still few spots left, so if you're interested, please speak to our team. Finally, for those who will not be joining us the study tour, there will be 2 side events happening at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on the first floor. So please feel free to take a part in those events. Thank you very much.